Welcome to the On Your Side podcast. I'm Gary Harper.
And I'm Susan Campbell.
You know, we have my favorite subject. Well, one of the top three favorites. Real estate is one of them. Cars is another. And of course, money is the other one.
We're going to have to start quizzing our listeners on this. Like, do you know Gary's top three?
Yes. Not particularly in that order. But yeah, I love talking about money. It could be a little unnerving for some people. I mean, for some people, they don't even like thinking about money because it could be either really good or it could be something evil in their lives.
There's a lot of stress involved when you're trying to make all of the budgets work and make it all come together, and you're watching prices go up and maybe the wages aren't going up as fast.
Sure.
There's a lot of stress involved for a lot of people.
I think a lot of the money, how you think of money starts when you're a kid and you're kind of like looking at your parents, how do they operate? I mean, I think obviously we get a lot of what we've learned from our parents, right?
Absolutely.
And money is certainly one of the key ingredients. So you're a mom. So what do you do with your kids as far as money? Do you give them an allowance, or, if you're in a store and they want one of those impulse buys, Mom, buy me this Hot Wheels car?
Yeah, well, the impulse buys are a no. We don't do that.
Do they realize that?
They ask.
Yeah.
And it's always a no.
Yes.
Because I'm a big mean mom.
Mean.
But with my 5.5-year-old, we have started to introduce the concept of money. So if he makes his bed, he earns a quarter. And he worked really hard to earn a whole bunch of quarters. And we just recently did this. This was last weekend. So it was a really fun kind of topic for me to talk about. There had been he saw a truck in a store that he really wanted. And it was $17. And we said, you can save your money. You can work really hard. You can maybe ask if there are other things around the house that are above and beyond the typical chores that are a part of being a part of the family.
Like shampooing the carpet or something.
Yeah, we do all kinds of labor at our house. He helped pull some weeds and things like that.
Yeah.
Things that aren't normally expected.
Sure.
And so he earned a bunch of money, and we counted it every day to see when we were going to get to that $17 mark.
Yes.
Right. And so then we went to the store. He got the truck that he knew he really wanted. And it was a good conversation because he had money before he earned all $17.
Right.
And he was like, well, I could get this other car for less,
Oh.
but is it what I really want?
Yes.
And you could see the internal struggle going on. Like, what do I do
could
with
get
this?
a lesser car and then keep the extra or apply something else.
We were so proud of him because he decided, I'm going to save.
Yes.
And I'm going to wait till I get this thing I really want. So he took a little Ziploc baggie full of quarters up to the cashier. He paid for his own truck. It was the cutest thing in the world.
Was this $17 in quarters?
$17 in quarters. And
I think the cashier hated you.
No, you know what? It was such a fun conversation. To this cashier's credit, he was also a young kid working, I think 16 or 17, like first job.
Yeah.
And he recognized what was going on. And he was like, man, this is so cool that you're doing this. Just wait till you're a little bit older like me and you can get a job and you get to earn even more money. It was a really fun, I think, eye-opening moment for this cashier and for my son.
Yeah.
And it was really cool that they had that interaction. And
That is
I loved it.
That's a textbook example of how to teach your kids. Wow. I'm proud of you, Susan.
Thank you. Sometimes the consumer reporting in me actually works.
I was a little afraid there when you were explaining that story and how it was $17 and how he saved up $17, and then you got to the store and the truck was now $21.
Oh gosh, that would have been devastating.
What would you have done?
Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah, go ahead.
We actually did buy a backup just in case he didn't earn money fast enough, and it sold out because we didn't want the lesson to go completely sideways. Of if you don't buy things fast enough, they sell out.
Right.
So we have the backup too that we're going to return now.
That is awesome. Well, you know what? That's a great life lesson for him. And that cashier, like you said, he kind of piled on as well.
It was awesome.
That's awesome. Hey, that's exactly what we're talking about, how to teach our little ones how to save. So we're talking to Sharon Lechter. She's the New York Times best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think I might be the poor dad over here. Sharon, how are you today?
I am fantastic. Thank you so much, Gary. It's wonderful to be with you. And Susan, thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. You're in Scottsdale, not very far from us. We could have had you in studio, but you're with us through Zoom, and that's perfect for us. Thank you for being on the On Your Side podcast. So tell us a little bit about Susan's example. What do you think about that, Sharon?
I love that example. In fact, I recommend to parents that they do this. It's all about vocabulary of money and what you talk to your kids about money. And not only did you give them, a lot of times people say, I can't afford it. And the power of our words are so strong. And that's negative. You get depressed. But Susan did the right thing. She said, do you want this? How are you going to afford it? And so he was challenged with coming up with ways. And kids can be very inventive about how to make money. But to allow him to get that money and then to actually go celebrate with him buying that truck, there's two additional benefits we need to underline. And that is his self-confidence grows up at the same time. And he gets confident. And the second one is once a child knows that they can truly make money and earn it, there's no stopping them. And that's, what we have to do is allow our kids to have a few failures, but also have that goal, achieve it, celebrate with them, and see their self-confidence grow.
Let's start with baby steps and start with maybe the 5-year-olds or the 6-year-olds when they're just kind of understanding what money is. What do you do with your children or even grandchildren to help them kind of immerse themselves into what money is? And, it could be really a powerful thing or it could be a really disastrous thing. What do you do with those young kids?
Well, a lot of people say they don't want to talk to their kids about money because they don't want them to get greedy. But at the same time, I ask, at what age do you think a child knows the difference between a $1 bill and a $20 bill? Usually 3 or 4. So they already understand the difference in the buying power. Let's let them educate them on the earning power. And you can do it by just simply talking. And when you're at a fast food restaurant, say the owner's not here because he has other people running it. The styrofoam container your hamburgers in was made by a different company than the one who makes the straws. Just talking about the world of money opens their eyes to the world of business and the things that are there, and let them start participating in understanding how much things cost, and let them figure out a way to earn what they want.
I will say it was a little bit of a challenge for us when my son started earning his quarters to talk about the value of these things because he doesn't see us use cash. My husband and I pay for everything almost exclusively on cards, our debit card. Mm-hmm. We just don't carry cash. It's just not the world that we live in.
That's a great example because, it
was a little confusing for him.
How does a child equate cash to a card?
Right. Like, this isn't what you use, Mom. So there was a little bit of, a conversation too about broadly, oh, we have the same money you have. We have quarters in the bank, that kind of thing. And then he's like, well, what's a bank? So then, we drive past the building. Yeah. And I don't go into banks with him. I remember being a kid, my mom would go to the bank every week and she would take out a certain amount of cash. And that was the cash we lived on. Right. And they live in a cash world. Right. And we just don't live in that same world. So it was a lot of vocabulary associated with this kind of learning lesson too.
Is that kind of a hiccup, Sharon, when you pay with cards in front of a child?
It is a transition that needs to be explained. And that's something that I'm working with Treasurer Yee here in Arizona right now to get a financial literacy class as a requirement for high school graduation. 25 other states have that. We don't have that yet. So one of the issues is a lot of schools say, well, I teach the kids how to balance a checkbook. Well, kids don't have checkbooks anymore, just like Susan just talked about. And so we need to get kind of with the real world and explain that. And Susan did it right, talking about my quarters run a bank and this card lets me access my quarters. And so they understand the parallel between the two. But it's really important for kids to have, when they have a question, to be able to answer it so that question doesn't linger. And it's really an important aspect, letting them budget for a meal at home and let them see how everything adds up. Even though you might pay with a card, here's the receipt. This is how each one of these items costs us money. And so again, it's just talking about the world of money and letting them understand that they have the ability to make money on their own, because there's no greater gift. Financial education is the gift of a lifetime, because once you know how to make money, nothing stops you.
For the bigger kids, for the kids who are preteens, teenagers, how do you bring them into the family conversation without making them either worried about money or overconfident about money?
Well, part of it, and there's so many tools today that weren't available 10 years ago. And that is you can get a debit card that has a certain amount of money, and the kids, when they run out, and they have to experience the fact that no, they can't go to the movie with their friends this weekend because they don't have the money left. Part of it is, as parents, we need to be mentors, not enablers. And there's far too many parents that are enablers. Oh, they want their kid to have everything. And so they give, give, give. And so a child doesn't have the appreciation of how to earn the right to do something. And that's really important that kids have the opportunity to stand in their own power, because when they understand that they can do something on their own, their confidence will grow and they'll be more able to tackle the next burden that's in front of them.
You mentioned enablers, and I think that's an excellent topic to kind of explore, because when my two sons were in high school, some of his friends had nicer cars than me. I mean, really nice, new Mustangs, and I'm like, I know they can't afford that, but that goes right back to the enabling. Listen, when I grew up, my first car was a 1979 Chevy Chevette. Susan, you and I have talked about this before. It
You're
was
a vet.
yeah, I could say I drove a vet, but it was a Chevy Chevette. But that's shame on parents who enable their kids like that, because it just teaches them the wrong lessons for life.
Those kids that have the fancy cars probably also have a credit card in their pocket that doesn't have a limit on it. And so they just think the money's an unlimited supply until one day they wake up and it's not. And so it's really important for them to learn those lessons when they're younger, where they're still in your sphere of influences. Too many kids go off to college or get on the real world and they have no clue about money. And it's a really hard reality when they're adults. And sometimes that impacts their credit score for years. So it's really important for kids to learn that while they're still in your environment, so that they can experience the loss of not making a goal, but also celebrate the win of making a goal and understand that they are truly in control of their own life. I mean, I have a board game called Thrive Time for Teens, and it's a lot of humor in it, but it gives kids the idea that not only how they spend their money, but how they spend their time determines whether they're going to succeed or not in life. Because money and time, those are the things that can get our teens into trouble, and we need to make sure we help them make the right decisions along the way.
We kind of talked about the families who might have a little bit more access to money, more access to financial stability, and feel, like they can enable their kids. But like on the flip side, there are also families who really are not confident at all about their own financial situations. There are parents who are struggling and worried about where the next meal is coming from, let alone, is my kid driving a cool car to high school? Those parents sometimes feel like, well, I haven't been able to figure this out. How can I help my kid figure it out? How do you help them? How do we meet kind of in the middle to make sure this isn't a familial problem that continues?
Well, that's a great question, Susan, because a lot of times parents don't want to talk about money because they don't want their children to know how they themselves are struggling, which is one of the reasons I created that board game, because you can do it without having the stress of talking about your personal situation. It's about discussing things that happen around money. And part of it is just experience. Because we're not teaching our kids about money in school, you learn about it at home. And so the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. That's because you're learning about money at home. And so if we really wanted to level the playing field, it's really important that we teach all children about money in their school. So each child has the opportunity to create success in their life. And that's what Treasurer Kimberly and I are trying to get across in Arizona. Every child in Arizona needs to have access to financial education, because everyone has to deal with money. So let's make sure they're capable and prepared for the financial world they face, because it is very stressful out there.
Sharon, you bring up a wonderful point, and I'm glad you're kind of spearheading that effort, because we have kids that are learning about history, which of course is important, and other things, science. Okay, I get it, but not everybody's going to college. They need life learning lessons, and I think learning about financial situations and money, that's got to be at the top of the list, right?
I did a really interesting interview with a first-time home buyer who is a woman in her mid to late 20s, wonderfully cool, savvy woman who also freely admitted she had no concept of actual financial literacy. When she was going to buy her house, she was like, I had to do a total crash course in just mortgage terminology, because the mortgage banker and the real estate agent, all these people are throwing out terms that make no sense to me because I never learned about it. So they're talking about escrow, and they're talking about a checkbook, and they're talking about these things. I've never written a check. How do I actually just do that for my down payment, right? And it was such an interesting conversation to have, because I'm not that much. I'm a decade different than she was, and I used checks, and she had never even seen one.
I hope she never found herself at a car dealer, because those sharks would have just.
Well, it's fascinating because my point is, she goes to an awesome paying, really high dollar, professional job every day, and it's just these skills are not part of the everyday.
Sharon, tell us more about this effort that you're spearheading with the Treasury, what is she again? The
General Treasurer.
Yeah, General Treasurer. I'm sorry, Miss. Tell us more about that. Like, what grade would you want to see that, and what exactly would your topic, how would it be introduced? I mean, checks are out the window, right? I mean, what would you like to see done with these younger kids, and at what age?
Well, Gary, thank you for that question, because it is very important. This is kind of like the pinnacle of my life. I dedicated my life to financial literacy in 1992 when my own son went off to ASU and got into credit card debt. So it's something that has been a lifelong. I dedicated the rest of my career to financial literacy. And so we are working with the State Board of Education now, hoping to get on their agenda in the next couple of months to pass, because the State Board of Education has the power to require a semester of personal finance for high school graduation. And they've been given that power, they legislated, so they have the right to do that. We just have to, get them over the finish line to make sure it happens. And Treasurer Yee and I have been working together on this subject since 2012, when we actually got some personal finance curriculum into the economics class that they have. Now we want to take it to a full separate semester of personal finance. And so, yes, anybody that's out there interested in supporting this, write to the State Board of Education and tell them that you believe in this and that you think it needs to happen, because it truly is so important. Just like you said, these kids, people are graduating from college with doctorate degrees and they have no clue about money. It's criminal.
Let me interrupt. When you say personal finance, exactly what is it that you would like to see in the classroom? We kind of discussed checkbooks, balancing. I mean, that's kind of outdated, I guess, but what would you like to see?
They need to understand about debt, good debt and bad debt. They need to understand about their credit score. These kids get out, they don't realize that they have a credit score. And you're asking me about how to help your teens. Let your teens start getting some credit while they're still at home. All right, so understanding debt, credit, investing, the basics of investing, understand the compounding interest, how it hurts you as well as helps you. The debt that's on credit cards is the highest it's ever been. The level of credit card debt in the United States is the highest it's ever been. We have to educate these kids before they get themselves in so much debt they can't get out. And, as Susan said, a lot of people out there, they're not able to buy a home for years because they've not put together the financial life that they need to be able to do that.
Is talking about mortgages in school, is that too early for kids, whether, I guess, even high school?
Well, mortgages are part of debt. And so we want the kids to understand what debt is all about. There's good debt, there's bad debt. And so understanding that in order to have momentum of money, sometimes you have to have some debt, like to buy a house or to buy a rental property, an investment. So getting them, again, just as you actually started this show, about the terminology, the vocabulary of money is so important, and kids aren't exposed to it. Let's get them exposed to it and let them see how buying, building, creating assets. All right, that's my favorite word on earth, assets, is how you get out of financial debt. Assets help you create wealth. Every wealthy person in the world has income producing assets. And we're not teaching that in school. We're teaching them to go get a job, work hard. And if you want more money, get a second job or work overtime. Let's talk about, it's not what you do for your paycheck that determines your financial future. It's what you do with your paycheck that determines your financial future. So let's understand that let's not be a consumer. Let's be an investor first. And as an investor and you buy assets, then the cash flow from your assets can help you buy the luxuries that you want.
Your sign behind you states, "My biggest fans call me grandma." So do you teach your grandkids about money, or is that something that should be left to mom and dad?
Well, around me, everybody learns about money because I can't stop myself. So, yes, we had our granddaughter with us last night, and we were talking about the cost of dinner. So it's just part of having that everyday conversation. Don't be afraid to talk about money. And it's something that kids need to learn as soon as they possibly can. And if they want something, let them earn it. Susan, your example at the top of the show is a perfect example for parents to understand and emulate with their own children.
Yeah, I've read that you need to have kids see and feel the money, like your quarters, for example. So,
well, you know what was actually a fascinating kind of side note to all of that? He got it out of the package. He played with his truck, and he loves the truck. He really does. But there was a smidge of buyer's remorse. He opened it up, and he was like, "Oh, there's not a car in here too. I thought it was a hauler with a car." He also experienced that very real emotion that I think a lot of us have when you make a big purchase and you're going, was this the right thing to do with my money? Was this the smart thing? And it was fascinating to see through the eyes of a 5-year-old, like, was this $17 worth it?
Oh, boy. I mean, you had lessons going all over that. I mean, this what a great learning experience.
I often teach that it's the experience, not the expense, that counts. And your experience of your son doing that will last him a lifetime. At holidays, your kids aren't going to remember in January what you bought them specifically, but you're going to remember when you get the bill. So make the holidays a time of experiences with your children, not just spending a lot of money.
Such good advice.
Well, I really appreciate, we appreciate, Sharon, that you came and kind of shared your experience and your knowledge with money and how to teach kids about it and, the do's and the don'ts. How do they find out more about you, our listeners anyway? How do they find out more about you in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Any websites, or how do they find out?
Thank you, Gary. Yes, I've actually written 28 books. My most recent one is How Money Works for Women. And you can find me at my website, SharonLechter.com, SharonLechter.com. And my books are available on my website as well as through Amazon. So I'd love for people to reach out to me, info@SharonLechter.com. And I'm right here in Scottsdale. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the On Your Side podcast, and go pinch those quarters.
Yeah. Buy some trucks.
There you go.
Thank you.
The On Your Side podcast is produced by Brad Denny. Our audio engineer and editor is Todd Martin. Segment producer is Colin Stanton. And I'm Gary Harper.
And I'm Susan Campbell. If you have a problem you can't resolve, maybe we can. Send us a message through azfamily.com or our AZ Family mobile app. Look for the On Your Side section and leave us a message. Thanks so much for listening to the On Your Side podcast. And if you like it, leave us a review. We'll see you next week.
On Your Side is on Good Morning Arizona every weekday morning at 6:45 and 7 o'clock. And every weekday evening on Good Evening Arizona at 4 and 5 o'clock. You can also catch it on Arizona's Family News at 9 on 3TV every weeknight.